Hey guys, how you doing today? Welcome back to my channel. This is Chris, aka Battle Axe on the forums. What we're doing today is going to be a new segment that I'm going to try out. It's a little bit of a newer format. It's not a flight video. It's not an introduction video. It's going to be something that's going to be called On the Bench, and this would be episode 1. These would be I'll be doing every once in a while. I'm in kind of like a grounded mode right now, waiting for a new transmitter. I'm waiting for some servos, some props, and all that kind of stuff. So building is really kind of slowed down, just kind of making some decisions on what I really want to do coming up in the future here. And I'll kind of give you an idea of what we've been kind of going through in the past as well. So as far as what I'm going to talk about as far as topics is going to be my transmitter, the issues that I've had, what kind of things I'm looking to get out of it. And then, just to see if anything is going to be solved by the fact that I was maybe misdiagnosing some of the issues that I was having just through process of elimination. The next topic we're going to play around with is going to be the builds. The builds themselves is going to be something about, I'm going to be talking about the spear, the arrow, the bushwhacker, and what's coming up next. And then, of course, a parts, a wish list kind of idea. So given that the, what I'm looking to do in the future, where I want to take the hobby, that kind of stuff, and possibly just getting into maybe a little bit of, the film sort of style, the production sort of style of stuff as well. As far as my transmitter went, I was having a lot of loss of signal issues, especially in the beginning. I had attributed that to being the AR620, no antennas, being buried inside the fuse. Played around with it a lot of minis, and in the minis you don't really see, there's not a lot of room in there. So cramming everything in there, getting wrapped around servo wires, too close to the ESC, could have been any sort of issues like that. So I went and got myself different receivers. So the receivers that I've been playing around with have been these guys here. These are the Lemon receivers. They're the 6-channel, 7 port kind of idea, one being binding port. And then of course we got our 4 basic channels on there, a gear channel and an auxiliary channel. Now, as far as those Lemon receivers going, I tried them out and I ended up having a lot of really good success with those. I did buy 2 of them, so I was able to play around with 2 different planes, bind them in and out, that kind of stuff, save a bunch of models on there and that kind of thing. What I found though is that I was still getting a lot of loss of signal issues. Like it was still kind of a gamble. Every time I went out, you've probably seen some of my F22 videos or the FT22 videos, a lot of my baby blender videos, and then some in the P40. The P40 was one that did end up losing a lot of, losing pretty much every channel out of it. What I was noticing though is that I would lose 1 channel at a time. I don't know if that was a situation, like a lot of the times on my baby blender, I was looking at it as like an ESC cutout, a brownout or something like that, where I was just losing the throttle channel. It would just be momentarily. It would just, just cut right out. I would glide. Sometimes it would just cut right back in again after a couple seconds. Sometimes I would have to knock back and reset the throttle and bring it back, and it would, kick back in again. But then I started to notice stuff like where I was losing just 1 channel, like aileron control. I would put roll input into it and nothing would come out. Second or 2 later, just like the throttle, it would start to bank. And I was noticing some stuff like that. And really the problem is that it's just inconsistent. The consistency totally sucked. You didn't know what you were going to get anytime you went out flying, that kind of stuff. I don't know if this is something that any of you guys have seen before, where you just lose 1 channel, or what the deal is. Again, I blamed it on ESC cutouts, but when I started to notice it on the ailerons, I'm starting to look at why am I losing just 1 channel, right? Again, getting the new TX, that might be something that, will help solve that issue. I might not get any more ESC cutouts. I might not get any sort of like just 1 channel cutouts, that kind of stuff, right? As far as the new TX goes too, in my original transmitter, I didn't have any issues setting up elevons. That was a really easy one. Just basically plugging in your aileron channel, your elevon channel, and just setting up your transmitter for elevons, either elevon A, elevon B, reversing, whatever you had to do. The one that I was never able to figure out, and I thought it was a me issue, is that dual ailerons. I was never able, I always had to use a Y connector for my ailerons. I was never able to, dial them in individually. What would happen is I would plug in the right aileron into the aileron port 2, and then it calls for the left aileron to be plugged into port 5, which is on the program, absolutely designated for 5. You can see aileron input on it and all that kind of stuff. But without it being reversed, it would fire the aileron straight up and hold it there. Now, if I reversed it, it would fire the aileron straight down and hold it there. There was no motion or anything like that. Right aileron worked just fine. Left aileron was either shoved straight up or straight down. There was no way to adjust it. I would switch channels. It wouldn't work, all that kind of stuff. And again, I thought maybe I had to program my receivers to take it. I was, looking for a lot of information on the forum, see if anybody else had run into this. Some people told me that you do have to program your receivers. Some people told me, no, you should just plug it in and it works, all that kind of stuff, no matter what receiver you're using. It's all about the transmitter. So I was kind of stuck on that one as well, but I wasn't really putting 2 and 2 together. Now, as of late, I'll talk about it here in a bit as well. I was doing a range test on a plane that I was about to maiden, and I would walk away about 100 feet away from the model, and I would lose my signal. And I would have somebody there watching the little light on the Lemon receiver. There's one that'll show you that it's powered up. Then there's another light on there that'll show you that it has signal. And as I'm walking away to around about the 80 foot to 100 foot range, the light would start to flicker. The signal light would start to flicker. And so that had me kind of thinking, maybe I should, maybe I have a bad receiver. So I went and put another receiver in, same issue. So given that, I had no choice anymore but to call Spectrum and ask them about the problems I was having. And the nice customer service lady on the phone, she told me straight away. She's like, yes, this all sounds like a transmitter issue. We'll just send you a new one. So again, I'm still got to wait another week and a half for it to show up in the mail. So I do have a lot of downtime, hence the segment. So as far as the transmitter goes, waiting on that, and I'm going to see how that works out. Another thing that I've been kind of playing around with is the receivers themselves. I noticed that with the Lemon receivers, being that they're about $13 US, $20, $19 here in Canada, they seem to be tend to be a bit of a cheaper money buy receiver, which is good because I tend to go through quite a few, being that I crash a lot. The AR620s that I had originally, I started out with one, crashed the plane, smashed the receiver, no good, bought another one. That one, I think I crashed a plane. I don't remember, that was a while ago. But over time, I ended up having 3 different AR620s at $50 a pop. I wasn't playing around with that anymore. And, given the issues that I was having, not knowing it was the transmitter that was my issue, I kept buying new receivers thinking that was the problem, right? Again, did a lot of research through the forums, all that kind of stuff, YouTube, just seeing if anybody else had the issues, that kind of stuff, right? And everybody's got a bit of a different story, a bit of a different interpretation of, what's going down, that kind of stuff. Anyway, what I've done is, with my receivers, is I've had to replace the antenna wires here a couple times. And it's just a matter of just resoldering them on. Kind of get your guys' opinion on this. I really don't know about antenna wire. I have been using old servo wire. It's stranded copper that I've been placing back on here, but they keep breaking off. Now, I did find a source of wire on my other Lemon or receiver, where the wire itself is copper still, but it's solid wire instead of braided or stranded. So I've been kind of playing around with that. It's a lot more solid, takes a lot more abuse. You can move it around, take it in and out of your model and stuff like that, and it's not falling off. The thing is that where these were breaking wasn't at the solder joint because of the solder. It was actually, what it was breaking off is at the strands right by the solder joint. So it was the wire itself that was breaking, not the joint. So I went to a solid copper wire, and it ends up working out just fine. I don't really have that much experience on it. When I did first try to maiden the last plane, actually that 80% spear that you see behind me there, and I did that range test, I thought that this is the first transmitter or receiver that I put in it, I thought that because of the solid copper wire that I was losing the signal at 100 feet actually away from the model. So that's why I went and put in the other one with the stranded copper wire, and I got the same result. So I'm thinking that it doesn't matter between stranded wire or solid wire. I'm not too sure. If you guys have any suggestions or anything like that, please leave it in the comments below. I would definitely like to hear from anybody else who has more experience with this stuff than I do. Anyway, moving on. Builds. Let's talk about the builds. So I did start a thread, Tip of the Spear, on the forums, talking about my adventure through the Wing series. I did build the spear, and you guys saw it. I had 2 attempts at the maiden. First one crashed and burned. I did have the CPAC in that one. The CPAC old radial, the EMAX, or not radial, but the old EMAX CPAC motor. It's the 1100 kV. I also had a 9x6 electric prop on there. I did have an incident. If you guys saw the video, you saw how it just kind of like took off, went about 20 feet, and then dove down to the right and nosedived into the ground. That was kind of a situation that I've seen before on my Simple Scout. I'm just basing that on that I just didn't throw enough power to it to get it to launch, and it stalled out and turned off to the right. Fine, no worries. It had a little bit of a dent in the nose. Anyway, little kind of a funny story. It's called the dog incident. It's something that I'm kind of, it's kind of funny. Dog's fine. But as I was walking up to the plane after it crashed, I had the dog and the kids with me. You probably saw them in the video. I accidentally hit the throttle stick. I didn't have the throttle cut switch on. And as I'm walking up, the dog beat me to the plane kind of idea. I definitely bumped the stick. It started to spool up a little bit. Dog pounced, apparently the dog doesn't like the noise, pounced on the spear and tried to bite the prop. Now in biting the prop, she busted the prop off. And if you actually look at the motor, the CPAC motor that I have here, she actually took the shaft off as well. And not only did she take the shaft off good, but it actually ended up breaking underneath the snap ring. So my shaft or my bell doesn't hold on there anymore. That kind of stuff. Now, people have told me that you can get replacement shafts for them. Great. I hear they're pretty cheap, like 10 of them for like $5. So I might go ahead and order new ones just to kind of keep this motor going. But other than that, I'm down to 1 motor right now. So that's a dog incident. Just to let you know, the dog is fine. She did get a little bit of a clip on her nose, a little bit on her eyebrow above her eye there, but needless to say, the dog is scared of the planes on the ground. She will chase them when they're in the air, but as soon as I, throttle up a plane or spool it up, she runs away from the plane, which is good. I mean, they definitely knock some stupid out of her, which is definitely the idea. On the second attempt at the maiden on the spear, launch went a lot better. I ended up putting my 35-36 1200 kV 0.15 rimfire in there, which is what I use in my Sportster. I'm going to be using it in the Bushwhacker. I've used it in a whackload of other planes like the P40. Used it in the Scout. It's a larger motor than the EMAX CPAC motor, so it definitely has a lot of power, has a lot of zip. And I ended up putting that in the spear after I fixed it. I had to do a little bit of modifications to the power pod, that kind of stuff. But and given that the second attempt definitely had a lot more power, I ended up using another 9x6 prop. It was a sport prop this time, so it's a lot more durable. It's not prone to breaking upon belly landings or anything like that. And it went a lot better. The flight itself took right off. I did keep it up in the air for about 2.5-3 minutes. I did notice with the spear itself, though, that it wasn't that stable. Some people are attributing that to all the vertical stabilization that I had on it. The stabilization stuff was just something that I wanted to keep it from from doing a lot of wing rock and all that kind of stuff. It was an experimental thing. There's people that were telling me that if you just used the wing fences without the fins in behind the fuse itself, then each would kind of catch the air a little bit, and you would get some oscillation side to side, some yaw oscillation, that kind of stuff. So I kind of wanted to stay away from that. So I added the third and fourth stabilizers in the center on either side of the fuse, and I didn't have any of that yaw oscillation at all. But what I did end up having was a lot of roll oscillation. And what people are calling this, like if your plane's flying stable, you got neutral stability. If you tend to rock back and forth and you're always having to correct it, that kind of stuff, they're calling that negative stability. So I think that's kind of the problem that I had with that. And if you're going to use it as a camera platform, it doesn't matter whether it's yaw instability or roll instability. It's not conducive to filming from. So I was kind of looking at that, and I constantly had to be on the sticks. Like if it was leaning a little bit too far to the left, I would correct right, bring it back to level, and let go of the stick, and it would just keep going right. Now, if I wanted to correct that, I would compensate for it, bring it left, it would sit level, and then it would just start rolling left again. So it was kind of like it was sitting on a basketball. It would never actually find its balance. I don't really know what that's attributed to, but I did want to still play around with the wing. I wasn't really discouraged by it. Now, as far as what happened in that maiden, is in the end, again, it was a loss of signal. I can definitely attribute it to that. If you watch the video, you can see how I kind of came around, and I was doing a turn. I picked up some elevation. I was doing a turn, so it was coming into a dive, and I wanted to pull up and bring it back towards me. And in pulling it up, it didn't respond in the air, and it ended up nosediving right into the ground. Smash the spear up to beyond what I feel would be something that I would want to repair. I might as well just build a new one kind of idea, and kind of move on from there. If the spear would have flown a lot better in that first 2.5-3 minutes, I would have duplicated the spear absolutely. But I decided that I was just going to play around with some different options as far as what the wings offer and that kind of stuff, right? So that's kind of what I was looking at there. Some people say that it didn't pull up because it was piling up air, and behind the elevons there was too much, or in front of the elevons there was too much throw, that kind of stuff. I really don't think that's the issue. The throws themselves were within reason. I could see that being an issue if it was like straight up 90 degrees or even a little bit lean back from there, kind of like the pickup or the tailgate of a pickup truck kind of holds air in there and that kind of stuff. I'm not really going to attribute that to that. It flew fine on low rates. It flew fine on high rates. It was just one of those things where it was a loss of signal for one channel, again, transmitter. So given that, trimming went fine and all that kind of stuff, but that loss of signal thing, it was really starting to be a gamble. Moving on from there, I did want to play around with a different wing. It's a wing that I had tried out before, the Mini Aero. The Mini Aero, a great little fast sort of design model, that kind of stuff. I did build it before. I had the F-Pack on it. I was a lot more inexperienced as a pilot back in the day. When I did build it, somebody told me, oh, you're really going to love the flying wing. It flies itself, basically, da-da-da-da-da. The F-Pack on that one, I think I was using a 6.3 prop, and I ended up maidening it, and that's all it lasted for was the maiden. It did stay up for about 1.5, 2 minutes, but holy crap, was it fast, and I couldn't control it. And of course, being a new pilot, you're just starting to maiden a new plane. You forget your name as soon as that thing takes off in the air. So I was kind of looking at that as kind of a learning experience. I thought it was bad voodoo at the time, but I really didn't revisit the Aero after that. I did smash it. Actually, that was actually one of the ones where I think I I didn't puncture a battery. I broke one of my receivers, actually. Again, not a lot of room inside the fuse of the Aero, so when I actually did a nosedive, it got jumbled around in there. I forget what it was, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't the battery that hit it, but it might have, it got dislodged and shoved one of the port plugs into the receiver. So useless, get a new receiver kind of thing, right? So what I wanted to do was play around with the Arrow, the same design. But since I was doing a lot of fun stuff with the prop and slot jets, the FT22, the Alpha, and then the mashup of the two, the A22, I was really having a lot of fun with those. So I kind of wanted to play around with that design, but make it more stable like the prop and slot jets. So with the Arrow, I ended up putting it together and I made it a AET, a 3-channel bank and yank. And the way I did that is that instead of using elevons in the wings, I made them just straight ailerons kind of idea. And then with 2 carbon spars in behind, reaching in behind, kind of like with the spear that you see in the back there, I made an elevator back there with 2 vertical stabilizers to kind of keep that yaw control in check kind of idea. I made in this thing, I did put like a power pod sized fuselage underneath the wing, just to kind of like put the engine mount on, mount the battery, the ESC, the receiver, all that kind of stuff. And it's originally built, it was built pretty strong. It was built to kind of like emulate a combat plane, which would have a little bit more stability, wouldn't need as much attention to controlling it, that kind of stuff. Something that you can really have a lot of fun with and kind of like go fast, go slow, that kind of thing. Worked out really well, actually. There's a video on my YouTube channel showing one of the Arrow flights, and with the actual modifications, it worked out really well. I was really impressed with it. It flew just like a 3-channel bank and yank would, and I was really impressed with it. I ended up making some modifications to it. I did crash that first one, so it opened up doors to actually make a second one. And what I wanted to do is just, I did have the fuse hanging below the wing, and I noticed that from like say half throttle to full throttle, that thrust line just shoved the elevation into that Arrow, ballooned right up. So what I did is I just traded places. I put the fuse on top, cut a channel in between the 2 wings, put the fuse on top, brought that thrust line above the elevator, above the wing line, and it kind of helped alleviated some of that ballooning under full throttle or power up, that kind of stuff. So I definitely had a lot of success with that one. Again, had another loss of signal issue. Lawn darted this thing right into the ground, and it wasn't a nice lawn dart, like a landing kind of, it jammed itself right in there. Like I actually had to, grab it with both hands and pull it out of the dirt. So yeah, I kind of messed that one up too. But at that point with the Arrow, I'm starting to get really skeptical about wanting to take planes out anymore. Like it's really just a crapshoot, like a 50-50 gamble whether a plane's going to survive a flight or not. So I was kind of starting to have my doubts, my process of elimination and stuff like that. I was kind of hitting the end of my rope there. So I kind of really wanted to, kind of look into that as well. So what I did, because that was smashed up, it kind of proved its point though, proof of concept, that kind of stuff. So I did make another spear, which is this guy that you see in the background. I'll kind of give you an idea of what it is. So if you take a look at it, you'll notice that it is a spear. You can tell by the fuselage shape, that kind of stuff. But what we do have here is that I did scale it down to 80%. With the original spear, just even launching it, carrying it in the car, that kind of stuff, I noticed it was super big. It was cumbersome. And even it was actually looked almost too big for the CPAC motor. Even though I'm using that 35-36 1200 on there, it just seemed really big, cumbersome, that kind of stuff. So I did drop it down to 80%. It kind of gave me more of an Arrow size. I think this is a 33-inch wingspan as opposed to the 41 that the original spear is. I did end up notching the wings out here, just kind of fit a 9-inch prop. I have an 8-inch on there right now, but it will fit a 9-inch if I need it. So I can put in like a 945 on there, and I can get a little bit more stabilized, slower flight, that kind of stuff. But given that, it does have the same fuse, the same compartment inside the fuse. So it's going to have I left out the strongbox part, given that it's a smaller plane. I didn't think it really needed it, kind of idea. And the way it's all set up as far as the spar goes, it is super strong. Like on my first spear, the dog stepped, like a 50-pound boxer just stepped right on top of the spear. All she did was kind of like dent this thing a little bit, but didn't crush anything. And she pounced on it. Like it was pretty serious. Anyway, what I did do though, as far as the 80% spear, I like the length of the fuselage that I had in the full-size spear, so I kind of stuck with that. I actually added an inch in length right here, just ahead of the wing. Added an inch in length, so I still have all that room for the camera. Once I cut out this area right in front of the nose here, this guy right here, I'll still have all that length for the camera that I need and all that kind of stuff. The only thing is that is different is that it's a little bit narrower in thickness here, and it's also a little bit narrower in width. So I'm not planning on putting a GoPro, FPV, all that kind of stuff on there yet. If I do plan for that, I'll probably go with something different. But what I'm just looking at is just to carry an onboard camera. So I didn't need all that room. And plus, it also left me still room to put two 2200 3 cells on either side of that compartment. So that worked out really great. Another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was, again, if you take a look at this, I do have the elevator on the back. These are the 2 vertical stabilizers, just like you saw in the Arrow. What you're going to see here, this is something that I did on the Arrow, and I also played around with it on the prop and slots, the AFT22 and the A22, is mechanical differential drag. Now, this is something that I seen in a video that a guy did on a wing. He was talking about it being mechanical as opposed to electronic, like programming it in your transmitter. But this is an easy little trick. This is something that actually works out really well. You've seen Josh Bixler do this with some of his planes, even the Warbirds or that kind of stuff, where he'll say, once you have your control horn sitting at neutral, or your servo sitting at neutral, you put your control horn in its center, and you swing from there. You get even sweep in both directions. He was talking about moving it back a notch, which I noticed on the Warbirds. Yes, you do get a little bit more up deflection than down, which creates a little bit more drag on the inside of the bank, which helps you with adverse yaw, which is something I haven't really experienced yet, but I kind of wanted to play with a differential anyway. So with these here, instead of like, I actually went way more extreme on the original Spear. With these, I've notched them back a couple notches. So you'll find that the more degrees of notches that you go back, like on the original Spear, I actually had them 45% or 45 degrees instead of like the full 90 compared to the side of the servo, is that it works just like your electronical differential. So when you pull, say, full left, your left, because it has more mechanical advantage pulling the swing this way, you'll get full deflection on your left aileron up, but you'll only get 50% down. And actually on the original Spear, by the time the downswing was actually hit, the servo arm and the servo control rod were actually almost in line. Like it was almost like it was swinging to nothing kind of idea, which was really awesome because I was playing around with the differential drag on the servo in the transmitter, and it did the exact same thing. So if you don't have that option in your transmitter, this might be something that you might want to look at. So if your servos are on top of the wing, you're going to want to put your your pull to positive kind of idea. You're going to want to put your servo arm 45 degrees back from center. Just notch it in there. Of course, center your servo, but position your arm 45 degrees back from the usual 90 degrees that you would do before. Just a little trick I kind of wanted to throw out there, give you guys some options, that kind of stuff. If you didn't know about it, you know, there's a little tip for you. If you did know about it, hey, right on, you're already in the game. Anyway, this is the 80% Spear. Like I said, this one I still have yet to maiden. Once the new transmitter comes in, I'll definitely be putting out a video towards that.